Welcome to the Global News Podcast, where we go behind the headlines to find out more about a story and why it matters. I'm Charlotte Gallagher, and today we're going to Washington because White House chiefs of staff are usually rarely seen and never heard, at least while they're doing the job. Not so President Trump's most trusted aide, Susie Wiles, who's the subject of a huge article in Vanity Fair magazine this week, in which she speaks candidly, very candidly, about her job, her boss, and many of the senior administration officials that she's had to deal with. In the article, she describes Donald Trump as having an alcoholic's personality, and she said JD Vance was a conspiracy theorist. Well, joining us now to discuss this is our North America correspondent, Anthony Zurcher. Anthony, thanks so much for speaking to us. What else has Susie Wiles been saying?
Well, in this Vanity Fair article, a 10,000-word profile, two-part profile of her, she kind of walked the author, Chris Whipple, through all of the past year with Donald Trump. And she pulled back the curtain on some of the divisions that we haven't seen inside the White House. This has seemed like a very united White House, particularly compared to Donald Trump's first term, but clearly there have been some very prominent disputes, arguments behind the scenes on things like the pardoning of the January 6th rioters early in Donald Trump's term, the deconstruction of USAID and the cutting of U.S. foreign aid. She talked about how there were internal divisions over trade policy, that there were some senior presidential advisors who were very much against Donald Trump sweeping tariffs on U.S. trading partners, and others who thought it was a great idea. And even discussions on how the administration handled the release of the files relating to deceased sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. And she had some pointed criticisms, actually, of some of the other people in the administration. She said Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, really whiffed on the handling of the Epstein files. She said JD Vance was a conspiracy theorist and had been for a decade. She had critical words about Elon Musk, saying that he used ketamine a lot, and he was very unpredictable and a strange bird. So again, we haven't had a lot of leaks from this administration up until now. This is one of the first times we've really gotten to see the inner functionings of it and some of the power dynamics and rivalries behind the scene. It was a fascinating look, even if Susan Wiles says all of this was taken out of context and that it misrepresents her views.
And she also said that Donald Trump had the personality of an alcoholic, but he is standing by her, isn't he? And we know this is a man who values loyalty, but he is standing by his chief of staff so far.
Yeah, all of the senior administration officials have rallied around Wiles, and Donald Trump, obviously, his opinion matters the most. You have to remember, Donald Trump trusts Wiles. She helped him win Florida in 2016. She was a co-manager of his campaign in 2024 and helped him win there. So that has earned his trust. Her father was Pat Summerall, who was a former NFL kicker who went on to become a very well-respected NFL play-by-play broadcaster that Donald Trump knew. And so Donald Trump knows the family, and I think that there's a certain level of additional respect that he has for her as the daughter of someone that he knew back in the 70s and 80s. So that has given her a certain amount of standing. But his trust has been built up over time, and I think he is willing, or at least seems so far to be willing, to shrug this off because she has served him so well and has run, by all accounts, a very tight ship within the White House this year after. And if you remember, in that first Donald Trump presidential term, he went through a series of chiefs of staff, all of the relationships ending up souring, Donald Trump ultimately firing them or them leaving under a cloud.
And Wiles has distanced herself from the article, but she's not said, look, I didn't say these quotes. It's quite a weird situation because she's offered them openly to this journalist from Vanity Fair.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard for her to totally denounce what she said, to totally deny what she said, because clearly all of this was recorded by Chris Whipple, the Vanity Fair author. There were these glamour shot photographs taken within the White House of Wiles, not only just Wiles, but Wiles and all of the senior staff of the White House, including JD Vance and Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, and other top officials. So clearly, she gave access to this reporter. She spoke on the record to the reporter. She's not denying that either. It's just now the way their view is that the way the piece was put together does not accurately reflect her views and her solid backing of Donald Trump, which she says, Donald Trump's the greatest president there's ever been. That's kind of a line that we hear echoed time and time again from top administration officials, even if some of the things she said kind of undercuts fellow members of her staff. It's not going to be an easy thing to kind of shrug off, but at least for the time being, the administration seems to be putting up a united front on this story.
And how unusual is it for someone in her position, a White House chief of staff, to do one of these interviews and say what she said, be so open?
Yeah, tell-all biographies and memoirs are not an unusual thing in Washington, but they usually happen after the person leaves the position of power, not in the middle of it. If you're talking on the record in the middle of an administration, the first year of an administration, that is very rare, particularly for a senior official. You got to remember, the chief of staff, that's like the gatekeeper to the White House, one of the most influential positions in the White House that manages all the staff, manages who has access to the president, what the president sees, what he sees on a daily basis. It's an incredibly powerful position. So to give a reporter from the outside, someone who is not totally sympathetic, who is impartial, has a great reputation as an impartial journalist, but still someone who is not necessarily going to paint a rosy picture, to give them access, that is really, really unusual. If someone's going to talk while they're in power, usually they talk off the record. They talk on background and they leak things out. Here, Susie Wiles is talking on the record, and she's putting it all out there.
I want to ask you quickly about another story from this week, which was the death of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, and the comments that President Trump made on social media about that, which a lot of people were really shocked by, a lot of people were really upset by. He's doubled down on that. He's standing by those comments. But what's been the reaction in Washington?
I think it has been shock. A lot of us who have been around Donald Trump for the past 10 years are used to him saying controversial, sometimes outrageous, incendiary type things. But for him to talk about a beloved Hollywood mogul, someone who is not just a director, but an actor and a producer with all of these really well-loved films, to talk about their death, that they somehow brought it on themselves by their anti-Trump views just a day after they were murdered. It was jarring. And what you hear even from some Republicans on the record was that Trump shouldn't have done that it wasn't appropriate, that he should have kept his mouth shut, that he is not helping himself or conservatives by being so brazen in his criticism of someone who, quite honestly, did have very outspoken views about Donald Trump and condemned Donald Trump over the past decade. But that is not reason, in their view, for Trump to effectively dance on his grave, to talk about what a horrible person he was while the body is still warm. So this has been a surprising moment where Republicans, who usually just say, I didn't see the tweet, I didn't see the post, they don't want to comment on it, some have come right out and said Trump shouldn't have done that. I think that shows exactly how out of kind of the norm, out of the traditional boundaries of propriety this comment was.
A tough question, but why do you think he did it?
I think in some ways Donald Trump, if he doesn't like someone in life or in death, he makes it very clear. He doesn't pull his punches. If he considers someone a critic or an enemy, he's going to say so right out front. One of the things he likes to boast of, and his supporters like to boast about him, is that he doesn't mince his words. He tells it like it is, and I don't think it's helping him politically, but that is part of the Donald Trump brand.
Anthony, thank you so much for speaking to us.
My pleasure.
That was Anthony Zurcher in Washington. And you can hear more on this story on the Global News Podcast. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts from. If you liked this, please subscribe to us on YouTube. And if there are any other stories that you would like us to cover, please reply in the comments below. Thank you.